Hello, I'm Dr. Cafe Lu, welcoming you back to HSH 1000, The Human Condition. Now, last week, I played the role of guide and filled you in on some backstory and gossip leading up to Xunzi in the Warring States period. Now that you're more familiar with the context and issues that he engages with, I'm back this week to dive into Xunzi's core views and look at how he responds to his opponents. I'm going straight for the major theme of this course, the human condition. So this video will focus on human nature, what's the central or unique aspect of our human existence, and what implications does that have for what we do and how we exist. As we construct Xunzi's account of human nature together, I'll also relate Xunzi back to texts and ideas and concepts already familiar to us. So look out for mentions of our new friends from last week, but also Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Even though they're not a part of the conversation in the Warring States China, you and your peers have been engaged in a conversation with them in your readings, videos, seminars, and small group discussions. You might find that as Xunzi's entered the group chat, he'll have you revisiting the conversations you've had with Gilgamesh or Omelas afresh. Here's the outline for the rest of the video. Essential definitions from the start of the semester are back. It's a helpful way many people try to approach the human condition. And defining what's human is done more easily when we can distinguish it from what it's not, or how humans and animals are not the same. Once we have Xunzi's account of human nature, we'll consider whether or not it's good. Spoiler from video 9, it's not good. Our nature is not good. And Mons' position on this is also not good. Mons said you're good, but he's wrong. Human nature is bad. So I'll end with Xunzi's battle with Mons over how good or bad human nature really is. By the end, you'll be able to list 2 qualities Xunzi thinks we share with animals, and one thing that he thinks differentiates us from them. Recognize the form of an IBE argument and describe the situations in which it gets used, and distinguish between 2 interpretations of human nature is bad and identify which one best fits with Xunzi's text. To varying degrees, the people we've been reading or discussing have been giving an account or an essential definition for human. Recall from your seminars the components of an essential definition. First, the definiendum, or what has to be defined, and then a genus, a first category or narrowing down to a class of stuff. And finally, a differentia, properties that will narrow it down to uniquely cover or determine its specific traits. What is the special thing that makes an existence particularly a human one? We've considered a version of this in Gilgamesh. Part of the humanizing transformations of both Gilgamesh and Enkidu serve to differentiate them from a broader group of things. This is often a useful strategy to make your point or claims more clear. You can explain what things are by showing or explaining what they're not, or how they're different from something similar. You find a contrast class. In Gilgamesh's case, as he becomes more human, he gains traits that distinguishes him from superhuman gods. With Enkidu, his humanization process shows the difference between humans and wild animals. In the previous video, Moses seemed so committed to measurable KPIs that he verges on a caricature of a myopic middle manager. But he has reasons to support his views. Moses' prescriptions, with its mirthless austerity, is driven by his conception of what humans are and what that means for how we need to live our human lives. As he condemns musical performances, he provides the following reasons in support. We're not naturally equipped with fur or hooves. We must labor for our survival. This is something distinctive about us. Unlike animals, humans have no choice but to live in communities because we're not able to be self-sufficient in the way that animals are. So, Mozart ends up caring about what supports the communal living we require to thrive. And Xunzi agrees with this. Human life cannot be without community. We need to labor together. We have to form communities in order to survive because we can't do everything on our own. This isn't a new idea in HSH. It was in Gilgamesh. One of the aspects exhibited by Uruk was the social organization. The division of labor, social interaction, and cooperation seems to be something that's part of who we are and how we're supposed to live. Enkidu had to learn this in order to go from a wild creature to a civilized human. You see in his humanizing process the same comparison with animals. There's all these things that Enkidu didn't know. How to eat, how to groom, how to dress. That's what humans do. They have to wear garments. They have to spin. They have to weave. Because they don't have hooves and they don't have fur. Just as you saw in Mozart, this is something that sets humans apart and differentiates us from animals. Humans have to cultivate the land and spin and weave. And this is reinforced in how we were presented with Uruk in the first place. You can see the agricultural element in the date palms and the clay pits indicating crafts, which also include spinning and weaving, or acts of creating through human industry. All the things that help us survive properly. So far, this sounds terrible. Wouldn't it be better to be a bird or an ape or something that didn't have to labor in the field, at the loom, or working in administration? But it's clear that for Xunzi, being a human is better than being a mere animal. It may come as no surprise, but ask most humans and they'll tell you that being human is better. So let me skip to the punchline. The other element, the other part of our human condition, and the other way that we're different from animals is that we as humans can engage in the practice of making ourselves more beautiful. We can cultivate ourselves and make ourselves better than where we initially started out. For Xunzi, this is something that animals can't do. Only humans can. And this is everything. All right. Chapter 1 of this text is up there on my list of one of the best chapters of all time. How surprising! A humanity professor is saying that one of the best things ever is this text that basically says in order for you to live your best human life, you should study the humanities until you die? What are the chances? But hear me out. It really truly is as profound as it is beautiful, and all I want to do until the end of video 12 is to convince you of this. I promise it's not just an anthem for HSH 1000. We're about to get into some details about human nature and how it differs from animals. But first, let me flag something very important about Xunzi that we'll come back to again and again. To be or exist as a human, it's not enough for you to just have the special different human traits or capacities. He thinks that you have to constantly be engaging and exercising the distinctly human aspects of yourself in order to sustain the difference. You use it or you lose it. If you stop using it, then you lose your claims to it and you forfeit your humanity. Videos 11 and 12 is focused on explaining and elaborating all the ways that Xunzi builds support for this claim. So let's construct Xunzi's definition of human nature. First, Xunzi provides a genus. Humans are things that have dispositions and desires. We share this in common with other animals. Dispositions are things like emotions that you might feel, such as sadness, anger, or joy. You can think of them as tendencies you have to things like you like what's beneficial, you dislike what's harmful. I dislike the feeling of hunger or feel joy when I'm consuming a delicious ice cream cone. And anyone with a pet will testify to animals having dispositions as well. We are also born with desires, the responses we have from our disposition towards things. You're disposed to disliking the feeling of hunger, which causes you to desire food. And when you feel cold, you desire warmth. When you're tired, you desire rest. As part of our nature, both of these things we have from birth. We come fully equipped with dispositions and desires straight out of the womb. No one teaches a newborn how to desire sleep and milk. So what's the differentia? What makes humans so special according to Xunzi? Well, it's actually the activity of looking for differentiation itself. What makes us so distinctive from all the other animals is that we draw distinctions. Humans are human not because we're featherless bipeds, it's because of our use of distinctions. Other animals are also featherless bipeds, like apes, and yet we can consume them. The implication? We're superior. We can dominate and overcome and even consume apes because we have this capacity for making distinctions. It's not that birds don't sire offspring, it's that birds themselves don't recognize and conceptualize the relationships involved. So we can set ourselves apart from animals by drawing and using conceptual distinctions. And, as I mentioned before, you have to keep sustaining the difference between animals by performing the activities that make you different. So somehow, the making and deploying of distinctions will be an important part of how we achieve the pinnacle human existence. Here's a quick recap so far. We've talked about human nature in terms of our natural capacity to have dispositions, desires, and draw distinctions. We used other animals as a contrast class to determine how we're different in order to give an account of what's essential to our human condition. Great. We're getting somewhere. We have a sense of why Xunzi thinks being a human is better than being a mere animal that's beyond smug, self-affirming human bias. At the very least, it's better to be a consumer than the consumed. We also know that Xunzi thinks human nature is bad, and he feels so strongly about this he wrote a whole chapter just to say so, where he takes down Mozi, who had the gall to claim that human nature is good. So for the remainder of this video, we'll examine this beef that Xunzi has with Mozi. Xunzi and Mozi were both Confucians. Sure, feuds with those outside of your house can get spicy, but have you noticed sometimes it's the beef within your own house with so-called allies with whom you're supposed to be aligned that end up surprisingly significant? Disagreements in your own backyard just feel more severe because y'all are supposed to share more in common than those outside, so the disagreements sting a little extra. As Confucians, both Mozi and Xunzi are aligned with the fundamental focus on cultivation. They believe that merely behaving well to avoid punishment is not enough. They'll both disagree with Mozi, who places almost all the importance on attaining the mere consequences or outcomes. It's not enough to incentivize the behavior you want without developing the right attitudes that accompany them. Merit lives in the quality or manner in which actions are performed, not solely in the outcomes produced. Mozi seems to agree with Xunzi about the precarious but superior distinction between humans and animals. But reading more closely, we expose a major chasm between the two. As I've already suggested, Xunzi thinks you need to actively work to actualize the human aspect of your existence. Otherwise, you'd be acting out the life of a beast. Mozi thinks you can't really do anything more for yourself to be a good human. All you can do is to keep other things from damaging or stunting your development. Not that being a good human is easy, but in some sense, there's no extra effort for you to make. Human nature, like that olive pit, is naturally inclined to grow and develop the sprouts of virtue. But Xunzi says that people's nature is bad or harmful, and their goodness is a matter of deliberate effort. I need to pause here and stress something very important. When Xunzi says that human nature is bad, he doesn't mean that it's evil or something morally robust. All he means when he says something is bad is that it isn't controlled or well-ordered. It's not conducive to community, unity, or harmony, and it's not good for maintaining peace. A room full of 7-year-olds after cake and ice cream is chaotic and not conducive towards peace nor harmony. In this sense, they are bad. But that's a very different thing from saying that they're nasty creatures who aim to do evil deeds. There's a distinction here, so you should be careful not to confuse the two. We've seen a series of reasons for his view about human nature being bad in video 9. I invite you to go back and review or reread through the section again. You'll understand so much more. But for this video, we'll look at a different, smaller section of text together that starts with human desires. Humans are born having desires, and sometimes they don't always get the object they want. So they'll try and get it. So far, it's straightforward. I have a disposition to feel joy when I eat ice cream. And when I'm hungry or feeling a sweet craving, my disposition is to like to eat ice cream. This creates the desire for an ice cream cone. But woe is me. There's none right here. So I'll try and attain an ice cream cone to satisfy my desire. Without a natural limit, we'll seek satisfaction without end. And inevitably, we'll struggle or contend with other people in the process. There's an implicit assumption of finite resources here. This is why we're going to struggle with each other and create chaos. Human nature by itself, with nothing else to intervene, would have our desires run amok and get in our way. It's going to go well for us. Fortunately, that's not the end of the story. We need something to be controlled and ordered, and that's what we're aiming for. So go back and look at that passage at the second part of the quote. Goodness is a matter of deliberate effort. There's another method of argument that Xunzi uses in his writing. It's called deductive reasoning, or more commonly, inference to the best explanation. It's a common method frequently used in the sciences and also in your daily life. Consider a familiar version of this type of reasoning. All the times you've been trying to guess what's inside a wrapped present, or times you've made an inference to the best explanation. You implicitly start by making some observations, but what you can't directly observe is what the present is. You can't see what's underneath the wrapping paper. Since you can't make a direct observation, you infer what it might be based on the data points that you do have. The inference should explain or account for the existing observations you have. It's the model that best fits the data. A good inference is one where your explanation accounts for all or at least more observational data points than any of the other possible explanations that could be given. And this is the argument Xunzi makes against Xunzi. There are things that we observe and we need to account for. They want an account of human nature that explains how people are different from animals. That one that allows you to say humans are all like this and animals are all like that. But we also observe that some people are jerks and some people are sage kings. So the new problem becomes, explain how humans can end up being so different from each other despite having all the same essential natures. You want to come up with a conception or essential definition of humans that unify them and also differentiates them from animals. But this account needs to show how humans can be so different from each other and how they exist or live their lives as well. Xunzi can do this with his agricultural metaphor. I'll continue to illustrate his view using the olive pit from the last video as my example. All olive pits only grow into olive trees. Olives and olive pits share their olive natures in common. And when the pit roots and grows, the sprouts are olive sprouts. And they all have the same capacity to become olive trees. You won't plant olive pits that produce cherries. The olive plants don't all identically grow into healthy, productive olive trees. This depends on its external growing conditions. Is it getting enough light or water? Are people trampling on it? And so too with humans. All humans have a shared human nature that animals don't have. Human nature contains the capacity or the sprouts of human virtue, which will grow and develop given adequate conditions. If humans are in inadequate conditions, like they're malnourished from famine or trampled by war, then they, like the plant, won't be able to develop well and become virtuous people. Xunzi's agricultural metaphor accounts for all of the things that he's supposed to. In general, human nature's pretty good. Just as the olive tree will have good virtuous sprouts. You're equipped to feel compassion, so just protect that and let it grow and develop into benevolence. This is all you have to do to become a good human. Xunzi takes a very different view, and he brought receipts. It only looks as though Xunzi's explanation adequately covers everything, but that's because Xunzi left out other important data points that his explanation can't explain. Xunzi is going to add 2 more data points with the intention of exposing the inadequacy of Xunzi's view and the explanatory power of his own. The first observation we've already seen. Humans all have desires that they seek to satisfy, which end in chaos. The second point is the fact that laws and rituals exist because they seem necessary. Xunzi shows how these 2 points are problematic for Xunzi. He presents a challenge. Imagine a world where there are no rulers, no rituals, and no laws. Do you really believe everyone will be good? No way. It won't take long before somebody takes advantage of somebody else. That's just what happens. People would take so many ice cream cones from 7-year-olds. If they desired ice cream, the opportunity was there, and nothing else was there to stop them. Xunzi doesn't have to disagree with Xunzi about all the good feelings you have by nature. You do feel panic or concern for the child in trouble, but you also want glory, fame, wealth, ice cream. The issue is that Xunzi left these things out. Desires aren't evil, but they're problematic. They're bad when they get in the way of our cooperating with each other. Here I should pause and highlight that Xunzi is not saying that desires or having desires is a categorically bad or terrible thing. The only way to get rid of desires is to be dead. It's part of being human. It's not bad to want ice cream. The issue is leaving desires' satisfaction unchecked. It's bad to want ice cream in ways that create chaos. There have to be boundaries that we place upon them in order for all of us to live together and do well and thrive. So it seems we have to stop unlimited chaotic seeking. Oh, hey, look, these things do exist. Rituals and laws and regulations and rules impose constructed limits to our desire seeking. Just because I want the ice cream doesn't mean I should take it from every kid I run into. So we place artificial limitations on our seeking, like the practice of sharing or norms around not stealing. The fact that they exist suggests they're necessary, which means that actual effort on our part is required. Our nature's not the agricultural Eden that Xunzi paints. Xunzi can't account for why prescriptive rules, regulations, and rituals need to exist. They're not supposed to have a significant role if the idea is that people don't need to acquire or learn virtues through rituals. Xunzi thinks that we just protect what we naturally have and allow it to develop into virtue over time. Keep in mind, they're both Confucians, and Xunzi is all about the role and importance of ritual training. So this is a totally awkward and embarrassing thing for Mengzi. It almost seems as though Xunzi is questioning Mengzi's Confucian cred. But by selectively recognizing only good parts of nature, he hasn't addressed the hurdle of human desire. That's a problem for Mengzi and his explanation. Mengzi can't explain why we need to institute rituals and standards, so this is another problem that lacks explanation. Mengzi's agricultural metaphor of the goodness of human nature can only explain 4 out of 6. But Xunzi's view about bad natures and deliberate effort can do much better. Xunzi's account can cover all 6 points. Humans are special and different from animals because we can make and use distinctions, not because of our moral sprouts. And because the dispositions and desires we have by nature otherwise lead to disorder, goodness is going to require deliberate effort. With deliberate effort, we employ distinctions that take the form of rituals and prescriptions we create for this very purpose, which is why some people become really awful and some people become Sage King. We don't all put in the same deliberate effort to be good. Spoiler alert, we don't all direct the use of our distinction-wielding abilities the same way. It's really about whether or not you've put the work in. So let me pull everything we did together. I've presented Xunzi's view of human nature by thinking about it in terms of an essential definition. Dispositions and desires determine a genus to which humans and other animals both belong. But the differentia is our ability to make and use distinction. Some animals are better than humans at surviving on their own because they're self-sufficient. But humans need to work together to survive. And if we do so, we might even tame or dominate the rest of the animal kingdom. The aspects of our nature, the dispositions and desires, are problematic. And when Xunzi says that human nature is bad, he's not saying that human nature is morally evil, but rather that it's unhelpful and not inclined towards harmony. Notice that Xunzi supports these claims in all the ways I've introduced in video 9. But we've specifically focused on the first and the third ways in this video. Xunzi supports his claim by showing that it's superior to that of Mengzi's, and part of this was his inference to the best explanation. He also directly gives reasons in support of human nature being bad when he shows why having desires is something inevitably harmful for order and harmony. What we need to do as humans is to apply our special human skills in a deliberate way to help ourselves live better. This is the constant condition of our lives. The ultimate human activity is to collectively come together and deliberately work to craft ourselves and intervene on the most unhelpful, chaotic aspects of our nature through ritual and norms. This is the way to be a human living a human life. What remains for our last and final video will be a closer examination into the specific forms of deliberate effort like rituals. I'm excited to discuss Taylor Swift, NS, NDP, religion, and funerals with you to show you how Xunzi's view of ritual has been quietly and covertly at work in you in ways that you didn't expect. So get ready to peek behind the curtain and see who or what's been pulling strings you didn't even know you had. See you in video 12.